Welcome to another RMS support tutorial. Today we will discuss and demonstrate the updates to the transmittal process for government mode. For this demonstration, we will show both contractor and government modes of RMS for further clarification. In contractor mode, we have already created and sent over 2 transmittals for the government to review and accept. In government mode, one transmittal has already been reviewed, signed, and placed in a pending contractor acknowledgement status. The other transmittal is still in review. If we double-click transmittal number 2, there are a couple of highlights to take note of. The date sent to contractor option is no longer available to be changed under any circumstance. This will affect all previously created transmittals. For this particular transmittal in review, the government approved the item and signed with an A code. However, later realized the submittal was a serial submittal with multiple stages that will need to be resubmitted at each stage and should have been coded with a C designation. Since the first stage of this is an approval, we will leave the A code and apply QA codes and complete the 4025. Once completed, this will place the transmittal in pending contractor acknowledgement along with transmittal number 1. In contractor mode, we will enter a date received on transmittal number 2, which will complete the transmittal entirely and listing it under completed transmittals filter. RMS will reflect the status of each of the submittal items listed in the submittal register module based on the status of the transmittal. For example, if we take a look at the submittal register shows each of these submittal items listed under a complete status since both of these transmittals were initially completed and signed with their respective codes. If we take a look at transmittal number 1, we can see that the government previously reviewed and completed this transmittal with an F code and realized that the contractor forgot to upload a document to the document package. If we recall transmittal 1, RMS will still prompt you of the changes being made before proceeding. We will still continue by clicking Yes and entering a transmittal recall reason. We will verify our credentials, followed by our PIN or password, then click OK. This transmittal will now be placed back into a transmittals in review status as indicated above. Opening this transmittal, we can make the changes to the government remarks section to reflect the proper responsible party and add a document to the document package as requested. By clicking the Add button, RMS will create a new document package where we can add any additional documents accordingly. We will also change the name of this document to reflect the missing document. Then click the Back button to save the changes. The document packages listed will show the status as accepted and not ready. Since the initial document package was marked as accepted, we can no longer make any changes by adding any additional items. In contractor mode, by navigating back to the submittal register module, we can see the status reflects the current state of the transmittal. Now that we have completed this task of adding another document to transmittal 1, we will complete this transmittal once more by applying the correct QA code and signing the document. This will now place the transmittal into pending contractor acknowledgement where the contractor will finalize by adding the date accordingly. We will now demonstrate recalling transmittal number 2 that has already been completed and needs to be resubmitted. Double-clicking transmittal 2 and selecting the Recall Transmittal button will result in the same process of acknowledging the changes and adding recall comments as previously demonstrated. You will now enter your credentials to confirm the actions performed. RMS will now bring us to the transmittal log main view where transmittal number 2 is now listed under the transmittals in review status. By entering this transmittal, we can update the QA code as requested in the government remarks as well as the recall comments of this transmittal. We will now be able to complete this transmittal as normal. After the signing process, we can see that transmittal number 2 is now listed under a pending contractor acknowledgement, where the contractor will finalize these transmittals in accordance with their district policy. If we take a look at transmittal number 1, RMS revision history located at the bottom will track all of the actions performed on this particular transmittal. For example, looking at the recall action entry, the title at the top will indicate the in review revision history with the date and time the action was performed. Revision history will also include all remarks and codes applied at the time the recall action was performed. Document package history will also be included in this entry. To enable viewing of comments related to this specific recall, a Show Recall Comments button has been introduced below the Government Remarks to Contractor section. This information will include comments, the individual who recalled the transmittal, and the date when this action was performed. For our final demonstration, we will pretend that when the contractor created and completed transmittal number 2, they forgot to add information that was necessary for contractual compliance and will need to be properly recoded and resubmitted according to district policy. We can resolve this simply by recalling the transmittal once more, acknowledging the action, and entering a transmittal recall reason. We will verify our credentials, followed by our PIN or password, then click OK. Now we can select the proper resubmit QA code based on district preference and policy. In most cases, codes G and E are used, but it is best policy to adhere to your district and office standards and regulations. We will also change the Government Remarks to Contractor field as a means of proper communication throughout the transmittal process. Now we can apply QA codes and complete 4025 accordingly. If we take a look at the revision history, we can see the multiple recall entries in the revision history of transmittal number 2. In the most recent recall entry, we can see the previous remarks to contractor and all of the document package history. We may also view the recall comments as previously demonstrated. Lastly, we can confirm the submittal item statuses based on the transmittal status. Since transmittal was recently coded with G, the status will now reflect as outstanding as intended.